I can tell you the exact moment the first real crack appeared. We were at a rooftop party in San Diego, one of those glossy corporate celebrations with skyline views and artisanal cocktails named after board members. Emily's firm had rented the entire venue. White canopy tents, crystal glassware, live jazz quartet tucked into a corner like a Spotify playlist come to life. Everyone there looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. Polished, accomplished, hungry. Emily was one of the lead organizers, which meant she floated from group to group like a politician on election night, smiling wide and laughing at every half-clever joke. I had been to events like this before. I usually felt like furniture, standing in the back, drink in hand, blending into the decor while Emily did her thing. I didn't mind, not really. That was our arrangement. I ran my own small design firm out of Carlsbad, and she worked in corporate finance. Different worlds, different rules. It never used to bother me. But something was different this time. I couldn't explain it yet. Just a current running beneath the surface. I spotted her across the patio, near one of the heat lamps, deep in conversation with a few people from her team. Her posture was relaxed, confident, the way she always looked when she was in her element. I remember smiling to myself, thinking how proud I was of her. 10 years married and still, sometimes I just admired her from a distance. The way she could command a room with just a glance or a gesture. And then Thomas Grayson appeared. I had met him once, maybe twice, enough to recognize the sharp jaw, the perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, the watch that probably cost more than my car. He was the kind of guy who could charm the sweat off a glass of ice water. Emily had mentioned him before, always with that same breezy tone she used when talking about colleagues. Tom's heading the West Coast accounts now, she had said once. He's a little intense, but he knows how to get deals done. That was the extent of it. But watching them together now, it didn't feel like work. Grayson approached her from behind and placed his hand, flat and deliberate, on the small of her back. Not a tap, not a guide through a crowded hallway. His fingers rested there like they had every right to be. And then he leaned in, right by her ear, and said something that made her laugh. She didn't flinch, didn't move away, didn't even glance around to see who might be watching. My grip tightened around the drink in my hand. I blinked, unsure if what I was seeing was really what it looked like. She leaned into him. Just a fraction. Just enough. They stood like that for a moment, too close, too easy. It wasn't the kind of touch that belonged between two married co-workers. It was the kind of gesture that hinted at shared secrets and private understandings. And in that instant, something inside me shifted. That invisible cord of trust, the one you don't think about until it starts to fray, pulled taut. She laughed again, tossing her head slightly. It was that particular laugh, the one I used to hear across the dinner table late at night when it was just the two of us and a bottle of wine. I hadn't heard it directed at me in a long time. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overanalyzing. That's what I told myself anyway, as I turned away and walked to the bar. I ordered another drink just to have something to do with my hands. But I couldn't unsee it. A few minutes later, Emily came up behind me and slipped her arm around my waist. "There you are," she said, smiling up at me. "I was looking for you." I forced a smile. "You looked busy." "Just making the rounds," she said casually. "Can't exactly ghost my own party, right?" There was a flicker in her eyes, something behind the easy smile. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or irritation. I waited a beat, then asked as casually as I could, "You and Thomas seem close." Her smile didn't falter. "Tom? He's harmless. Just flirty. That's how he is with everyone." "He had his hand on your back," I said, watching her face. "Pretty familiar for a coworker." She let out a soft, performative laugh. "Oh, Andrew, that's just corporate culture. Everyone here's a little touchy-feely. It's not like your world." There it was again, that line. I didn't understand. I wasn't part of that world. As if corporate finance had its own rules, its own moral compass, and I was being childish for applying mine. I said nothing, just nodded, because the alternative was to start something in the middle of her firm's rooftop gala. But my silence didn't go unnoticed. "Come on," she said, nudging me gently. "Don't tell me you're jealous." I didn't answer. She stepped in closer, wrapping her arm around me again. Her voice low. You have nothing to worry about. I love you. Okay. I nodded again, but something in me had already shifted. I had felt it the moment Grayson touched her. The way she didn't pull away. It was the kind of moment you don't come back from. Not because it's proof of anything, but because it opens a door. And once it's open, you can't pretend you didn't see what was behind it. I spent the rest of the evening going through the motions. Smiling politely when introduced, clinking glasses with people whose names I'd forget the next day, making just enough small talk to keep from drawing attention. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely. I watched her more closely than I ever had. How she drifted through the crowd with practiced ease. How she laughed a little too long at Grayson's jokes. How she checked her phone twice while glancing toward the exit, as if timing something. Or someone. I don't know how long the party lasted. At some point, the music blurred into background noise and the guests thinned out, leaving just the hardcore networkers and tipsy middle managers trying to dance. Emily was still smiling, still radiant, still untouchable. And I was alone in a crowd of people, feeling like I just caught the edge of something I wasn't supposed to see. We drove home in silence that night. Emily hummed softly to the radio, fingers drumming on the steering wheel like nothing was wrong. I stared out the window, San Diego's lights blurring past, thinking about how one small moment could stick in your mind like a thorn. It wasn't jealousy, not really. It was something colder, something quieter. Doubt. The kind that doesn't yell, just settles in your gut like a stone. When we got home, she kicked off her heels, unzipped her dress, and disappeared into the bathroom. 10 minutes later, she was in bed scrolling through her phone, screen angled away from me like it always was lately. I stood in the doorway for a second longer than usual, watching her face lit by the blue glow. She didn't look up. Everything okay? I asked. She glanced over, smile already in place. Yeah, just catching up on emails. Long day. I nodded. Right? That was the beginning of the pattern. Or maybe it had started earlier, and I just hadn't noticed until now. In the days that followed the party, I started paying attention. Not obsessively at first, just observing. A quiet sort of inventory. A look here, a change there. Little things, like how she started coming home late more often, always with a new excuse. Client dinner ran over. Or Tom needed a second set of eyes on the quarterly report. Sometimes she came home with takeout, sometimes not. But always tired, always a little distracted. There were nights she wouldn't even eat with me. Just went straight upstairs, showered, and slipped into bed already half asleep by the time I got there. I tried telling myself it was a busy season, that work was demanding, that she was stressed. But that doubt, it was growing roots. One Saturday afternoon, I offered to join her on a quick errand run. Something we used to do together, grocery shopping, picking up dry cleaning, whatever. She hesitated. I'll be quick, she said. You don't need to come. I don't mind. I kind of need some alone time today. Recharge a bit. She smiled as she said it like it was perfectly reasonable. And maybe it was. Maybe that's all it was. But later, when she came back, I noticed a faint scent that didn't belong to any store or dry cleaner. It wasn't her usual perfume either. It was subtle, masculine, expensive, something I might have worn years ago, something I couldn't ignore. I asked her about it. She blinked, paused just a beat too long, then laughed. Oh, one of the guys at the office gave me a hug. He wears way too much cologne. I guess it rubbed off. Which guy? I didn't ask. I already knew who she meant. Another night, she left her gym bag on the floor by the door. While she was in the shower, I glanced inside. Nothing obvious, just workout clothes, but also a small gift bag, wrapped in dark tissue paper. No tag, no card. When I asked about it, she didn't even blink. A client gave it to me, she said. Some holiday thank you thing. But it was April. The bag disappeared later that night. I never saw the gift. Never heard about the client again. Then there were her passwords. Changed all of them. I found out by accident. Wanted to play a playlist on her Spotify while she was cooking. Something I'd done 100 times before. But I was locked out. "Oh yeah, I had to update some stuff," she said. "IT told us to rotate everything. Security thing." I asked her for the new one. She smiled without looking at me. "I'll just log in for you." I let it go. But I started noticing it more. How she'd tilt her phone away when texting. How notifications were suddenly turned off during dinner. How she never left her devices unattended anymore. If she stepped away from her phone, it was never more than a few feet. There was also the change in how she spoke to me. Like everything had a filter now. Our conversations became transactions. Logistics. She'd mention something funny from work, but not the people involved. I'd ask about a trip and get vague details. She told me she was flying to Seattle next month for a conference. One we talked about going to together the year before, but now she said it was too busy for spouses. "You wouldn't enjoy it," she added. "It's all panels and financial forecasts. But we used to make weekends out of those things." She was the one who used to insist on turning work trips into little vacations. Now I wasn't invited. One night I tried to bring it up. Not directly, just gently, like testing the floorboards before stepping forward. "Do you feel like we've been disconnected lately?" I asked. She paused from brushing her hair and looked at me in the mirror. "Disconnected how?" "I don't know. Like we're not really in sync." She turned, brushing paused mid-stroke. "Is this about the party again?" "No. It feels like it is." I exhaled. "It's just, you've been distant, different." "I'm under a ton of pressure right now," she said quickly. "You wouldn't believe how hard things are at the firm. And I know I've been tired and distracted, but it's not about you. It's work." "Okay." I nodded slowly. "Okay." She came over and kissed me then, quick, mechanical. Not cold, exactly. Just practiced, like checking a box. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the picture was building in my head. Bit by bit. A mosaic of moments that didn't add up. Not a smoking G*N, just smoke. In every room. A week later, I was cleaning out the trunk of my car when I found one of Emily's old notebooks. One she used to jot down personal things, plans, ideas. I flipped through it, not expecting anything, and landed on a page with a list. Not to-do items. Not groceries. It read, Malibu, maybe May, boat day, if he can swing it. Privacy essential. Gift, not something Andrew would notice. Excuse. Strategy session? That last one hit harder than it should have. I stared at the page for a long time, trying to tell myself it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was from a project pitch. Maybe it was fiction. Maybe it was nothing. But that's how denial works. It looks for a softer explanation because the truth hurts too much. Eventually, I folded the page and put it in my desk drawer. I never asked her about it. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I started paying even closer attention. I took notes, kept my own list, times, dates, excuses, inconsistencies. I didn't know where it would lead yet, but I knew something was happening. Something beneath the surface. And if I couldn't prove it yet, I could feel it. In every shift of her tone, every guarded glance, every sudden, unexplainable change in routine. The cracks were everywhere now. And once you see them, you can't pretend they're not there. There's a moment when suspicion hardens into certainty. Mine came on a gray Thursday morning. Emily said she had an early meeting, strategy alignment before the Q3 rollouts, and left the house in a rush. No coffee, no kiss, just perfume in the hallway and the sound of the door shutting before I even made it downstairs. Except, her meeting wasn't on her shared calendar. Not anymore. I started checking. It felt wrong at first, like invading someone's diary. But that faded fast once the lies began piling up. That morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. I waited 15 minutes, then grabbed my keys, drove 2 blocks down, and parked near the corner gas station where I had a clear view of the main road. It felt ridiculous, like I was some jealous sitcom husband playing spy. But the second I saw her car stop at the red light and then turn, not toward downtown, not toward her office building, but west, toward the coast, my heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't a hunch anymore. I kept my distance. Too far and I'd lose her. Too close and I'd blow everything. She wasn't a careless driver. If she noticed a tail, she'd call it out instantly. But she didn't. She was too focused on where she was going. 20 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of the Seabright Marina and idled near the private access gate. A moment later, a black Audi pulled in behind her and flashed its lights. The gate buzzed open. Thomas Grayson. I couldn't see his face from where I was, but the profile matched. Tall, broad shoulders. His smug, custom-tailored silhouette was impossible to miss. She reversed slightly to let him take the lead. Then she followed. I didn't go in. I parked 2 blocks away, found a hill with partial view through a line of palms, and zoomed in with my phone's camera. The marina was sleek, nothing like the working docks down by Mission Bay. This place had chrome-finished rails and yachts with names like Escape Plan and Meridian printed in gold leaf across their hulls. They met on the dock. No hesitation, no awkward distance. He reached for her like it was habit. She didn't resist. They embraced. Not a hug, an embrace. Her hand slid around his neck. His pressed against the small of her back, right where it had landed at the party. Then, without a glance around, they boarded a mid-sized yacht, Grayson unlocking the cabin with ease. She followed him inside. The cabin door closed behind them. I stood there, phone still raised, fingers shaking as I kept taking pictures like I needed 100 of them to make it real. I don't know how long I stood there. 5 minutes? 10? I watched the marina shift from quiet to full morning bustle while I stood frozen in place. Eventually, I walked back to the car and drove home in silence. My ears were ringing. My heart thudded in a steady, cold rhythm. There was no adrenaline, no yelling in my head, just a deep, clinical understanding that I'd been right, that everything I had felt, feared, suspected, it was all true. She wasn't at a meeting. She was with him, on a yacht, in the middle of a Thursday morning. No amount of clever excuses or "you're just imagining things" could erase what I'd seen. And yet, when she got home that evening, she walked in like nothing had happened. "Hey," she said, tossing her keys on the entry table. "Long day. Sorry I'm late." Tom pushed the strategy session into lunch and then everything else snowballed. I watched her shrug off her jacket and slip off her heels. She didn't flinch, didn't stammer. I'd seen people lie before, but never with that kind of ease, that kind of polish. I think that's when something in me shut off. Some final switch flipped, because suddenly I wasn't sad. I wasn't hurt. I was just focused. I said nothing, just nodded, asked if she wanted dinner, and pretended like I believed her. But in my mind, I was already planning next steps. Later that night, after she went to bed, I locked my office door and opened a browser window. The pictures were still on my phone, but I transferred them to an encrypted folder and backed them up on a flash drive. Felt like war prep, evidence, documentation, something solid I could hold in my hand when the time came. But I needed more. Pictures were a start, but I wanted everything. Messages, patterns, financials. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 7 years. Mason. He and I went to college together, both computer science majors, before I changed tracks. He stayed in the tech world. Now he worked in cybersecurity for a private consultancy. Back-end systems, digital footprints, privacy management. Quiet, efficient, and expensive. He owed me a favor. "I'll pay you," I said over the phone. "But I need to know everything." There was a pause. "You think she's having an affair?" he asked. "I know she is." He didn't ask for proof. Just said, "Send me her phone model and carrier. And anything else you've got." Over the next few days, I gave him everything. Times, names, email addresses. I forwarded every file I had and let him do what he did best. While he worked, I found a lawyer. Her name was Rebecca Lynn. I picked her not because she had the most stars on Yelp, but because she had a reputation for tearing apart cases like mine. No emotion, just cold precision. "I don't want to drag this out," I told her. "But I don't want to get played either." She nodded, already taking notes. "If she's been hiding assets or mixing personal and professional funds with this guy, We'll find it. I hadn't even considered that. But now that it was out there, it made perfect sense. Grayson wasn't just some charming homewrecker. The deeper I looked into him, the more unsettling it got. Multiple prior complaints from other firms, NDA settlements with suspicious timing, and a disturbing pattern of getting close to married women in positions of influence, usually connected to companies ripe for restructuring or acquisition. And every time, their husbands got blindsided. Their businesses hit financial turbulence. But Grayson always walked away clean. Promotions, bonuses, even recommendations. It wasn't just an affair. It was a strategy. I spent hours building timelines, matching when Emily started changing her habits with key financial moves in my own business. Payments flagged, partnership deals withdrawn, a shared accountant whose friendliness suddenly cooled. The picture was coming into focus now, and it was uglier than I thought. I checked my accounts, then moved my assets. Everything liquid I could touch went into a protected trust, locked behind multi-factor verification and managed by a secondary custodian. I opened new accounts at a different bank, canceled all auto transfers, froze lines of credit. I wasn't just defending my heart anymore. I was protecting my future. Mason called a few days later with a tone I hadn't heard from him before. Subdued, cautious. I got into the synced backup folder on her phone, he said. She's been using encrypted apps for the sensitive stuff, but there's enough metadata to map their meeting spots. How many? More than a dozen. Hotels, restaurants, 2 private properties, and 1 membership-only club. Grayson's. Likely. The car tags match. He sent me a map with timestamps, images pulled from traffic cameras, restaurant surveillance footage, even reservation logs. It was airtight. By the end of that week, I had what I needed. Hard drives, backups, photographs, call logs, messages with coded nicknames and blurry selfies taken on balconies and in hotel lobbies. There was no denying it now. The truth wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a file, folder, a hard fact I could print, mail, and read in a court of law. After Mason handed me the final dataset, timelines, GPS history, restaurant reservations, phone logs, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt cold, like something essential had been scraped out of me and replaced with machinery. Grief was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. The betrayal wasn't some one-off fling, a mistake made in the dark. This was organized, repeated, protected, and now, possibly we *p* nized against me in ways I hadn't even begged *n to grasp. I stared at the screen of my laptop, the heat from the processor warming my hands as I scrolled through the photographs. Emily and Grayson, laughing in cafes, arriving together at boutique hotels, hands brushing over shared appetizers. One image stood out, her in a navy trench coat, waiting by his car while he tipped a valet. She was smiling, calm, comfortable, like this wasn't a secret, like this was routine. I printed 3 copies of everything. One for my safe, one for Lynn, and one for what I began to think of as my go bag. Not because I planned to run, because I didn't want to be caught flat-footed if she tried to flip the script. Because someone like Grayson didn't just destroy marriages. He eroded everything around them. I learned he'd been investigated in 2 states. Financial coercion, insider trading, both cases quietly dismissed. The firms that accused him collapsed soon after, sometimes due to unfortunate timing, sometimes because the husbands of his former targets walked away with nothing. He knew how to pull the string that unraveled everything, and he liked it that way. He wasn't just dangerous, he was careful, and I couldn't afford to be 1 second slower. So I called in every favor I had. Old colleagues, clients, contacts in legal compliance. Anyone who could dig into Grayson's professional past without tipping off his firm. The more I gathered, the more a pattern formed, an unsettling overlap between his romantic conquests and the strategic failures of their partners or husbands. Like he used int Macy as a wedge to pry open bigger vulnerabilities. I wasn't going to be his next casualty. First, I protected my business. I removed Emily from every financial tie. We used to share a tax advisor and bookkeeper. Now, I moved to a discreet CPA in La Jolla, one who specialized in asset preservation and hostile separations. I restructured my LLC, retitled the house into a personal asset shield, sold 2 smaller properties we had jointly invested in, citing market volatility, and quietly transferred the proceeds into a trust under my brother's name. I even called the insurance company to adjust my coverage. "You expecting something?" the agent asked, half joking. "Just want to make sure I'm not caught off guard," I said. Next, I began compiling a log, not just of her betrayals, but of every expense tied to them. The hotel stays, car rentals, restaurant bills paid on the company card. The yacht day, I had receipts for everything. Dates matched precisely with her conference calls and late meetings. I wasn't just building a divorce case anymore. I was preparing for corporate fraud. Emily had always been clean on paper, sharp, dependable, polished. But now, with enough pressure applied in the right places, I could see the outline of negligence. At best, willful participation at worst. Rebecca Lynn's eyes lit up when she saw the data. "This is gold," she said, flipping through the printed logs. "We're not just talking adultery. If she's been covering for him professionally, especially with misuse of funds, there are serious implications. She could lose more than the marriage." "What do I do in the meantime?" "Keep acting normal," she said. "Don't tip your hand. If they get wind that, they'll start erasing things." So I played the role, the dutiful, oblivious husband. I still made her coffee some mornings, still asked how her meetings went, still feigned interest in her firm's quarterly forecasting tools. I let her believe she was smarter than me, let her underestimate me. I'd nod while she told another rehearsed story about how draining her week had been. I'd watch her scroll through her phone while pretending to look up recipes. I even took her out to dinner once, her suggestion. She wanted to reconnect, she said. I think she was trying to ease her guilt, or maybe distract me long enough for the final pieces of their plan to fall into place. But I didn't drink the wine, didn't trust it. Instead, I kept logging everything. Her calendar changes, her Venmo history, a payment to a private event planner with no corresponding social outing, a charge from a florist in a zip code 20 miles from her office. Then came the hotel video. Mason sent it without warning, a silent clip from a business-class hotel near the marina. Grayson entering the lobby first, looking around casually. 5 minutes later, Emily arrived. They didn't speak at the front desk, didn't check in together. But 10 minutes after he took the elevator, she followed. It was surgical, practiced. I showed it to Lynn the next morning. She didn't blink. "We have enough to initiate a separation on grounds of infidelity and financial misconduct. If you want to file, I can start today." "Not yet," I said. "Why not?" "Because I want to know how deep this goes." That week I followed her again. Not because I needed more proof, because I needed to see it one more time, with my own eyes. She told me she had an all-day workshop in Encinitas. I told her I had back-to-back client meetings. She kissed me on the cheek, said, "Wish me luck," and walked out the door. I left 15 minutes later. She never went to Encinitas. She met Grayson at a downtown bistro with blacked-out windows and imported wine. I parked across the street and watched them through the tinted glass. He reached for her hand as soon as they sat down. She smiled. Not forced, not nervous, just comfortable, like she belonged there. They stayed for 2 hours, then left separately. She drove home. He didn't. I stayed in my car for another 15 minutes, watching nothing, feeling everything. That night, she came home carrying a tote bag I didn't recognize. She said she picked up some materials from the conference. I nodded, asked what they covered. She said it was mostly corporate strategy alignment. I nearly laughed. After she went to bed, I opened the bag. Inside was a presentation folder, untouched, still sealed. A cover letter addressed to someone else entirely. No badge, no notes, just a prop. Something to look official. Something to wave around if I ask too many questions. The kind of detail you only think about when you've lied before. I zipped the bag closed and set it by the door. And I realized then I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was ready. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. The plan was to control the rollout, to choose the moment, the setting, the audience. But as I was quickly learning, even the best strategies have weak points. Mine came during a school event of all things. Our daughter Lily was in second grade, and her school was hosting a spring art showcase. Finger paintings, papier-mâché animals, glitter-coated chaos. Parents lined the halls with phones in hand, sipping complimentary lemonade while marveling over scribbled rainbows like they were gallery pieces. Emily almost didn't come. She texted last minute saying she might be late. Work emergency. Grayson's being impossible. That last part made my stomach turn. She still said his name out loud to me. Still tried to paint it as some professional cross to bear. I told her not to worry, that Lily and I would hold down the fort. She showed up 20 minutes before the event ended, wearing heels too sharp for a school hallway and that navy wrap dress I'd stopped seeing as beautiful. The one she once called her closer dress. I was standing near the juice table, half watching Lily explain her volcano of feelings project to another kid's mom. When I heard it, two women behind me, chatting in that hushed but not hushed tone people use when they don't think they're being overheard. Did you see that picture of Emily Carter at Tavalo's last weekend? With that guy. Tom something? Thomas Grayson. From her firm, I think. They weren't exactly being subtle. The other woman laughed. Isn't she married? I know things happen, but wow. I turned slowly, not because I wanted to confront them, but because I needed to see the look on their faces. They weren't malicious, just entertained, a little thrilled to be in the know. I caught one of them glance at me, then quickly away, like she'd seen a ghost. Her face drained of color. She knew. They both did. They didn't know I was Emily's husband. They didn't know I was right there. But they knew about her, about Grayson, about the dinners and the photos and the whispers that had started circling through their social spheres. It was out. The humiliation settled over me like a weighted coat. Not rage, not pain, just exposure. I felt flayed open. The private collapse of my marriage now fodder for gossip under fluorescent school lights. I didn't say anything, didn't confront them. Instead, I bent down, picked up Lily's painting, and walked it to the car. Emily came out a few minutes later trying to play casual. You didn't say goodbye to the teacher, she said, slipping into the passenger seat. I think we've said enough. She gave me a look. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out of the parking lot in silence. That night, something shifted. Emily could feel it. I wasn't playing the part anymore. I didn't ask about her day. Didn't feign interest in her stories. I sat at the table with my laptop open, going through financial statements with headphones in, as if she didn't exist. She hovered in the doorway longer than usual, like she was waiting for me to acknowledge her. I didn't. The next day, Lynn filed the preliminary paperwork. I hadn't served her yet, but the train had left the station. I handed over the folder labeled Public Evidence, which included every piece Mason had recovered plus the school incident, complete with **TS from the social media posts those two moms later shared. By the weekend, the gossip had reached her parents. Emily had always been their golden child. Composed, capable, a woman who married well and seemed destined for a perfect suburban life. They adored me, or at least the idea of me. I was the grounded husband with the stable business and the mortgage already half paid off. When they called, I expected outrage. Instead, I got silence. Her father's voice on the line, clipped, formal. We understand things are complicated, but we'd like to speak with you, in person. I drove out to their home the next evening. A gated community with trimmed hedges and wine racks curated like museum exhibits. They met me in the kitchen. No small talk, no hugs. Her mother poured me coffee and slid a manila envelope across the table. What's this? I asked. Her father folded his hands. Protection. For Lily. Inside was a statement from their attorney, an amendment to their estate plan. They were removing Emily as a direct beneficiary, reallocating all funds into a trust overseen by a third-party custodian, with me as trustee. Their only condition? that the money be used solely for Lily's health, education, and well-being. I looked up, unsure what to say. "We've seen the photos," her mother said. "The ones at the restaurant, the hotel, the yacht." "I didn't send them," I said. "No," her father replied. "But someone did, and we believe you." That night, Emily got a call from her father. I heard the entire conversation from the hallway. "What do you mean you changed the will? Dad, this is absurd. That trust was supposed to—" "No, I haven't spoken to Andrew about. I'm not having this conversation over the phone." Click. She didn't sleep in our room that night. The next morning, she was in the kitchen before I was. Pale, hollow-eyed. She pushed a mug of coffee toward me. "I think we should talk." I sipped in silence. She twisted the ring on her finger, that same gold band I had once agonized over choosing. "I think things got away from me," she said finally. "I don't want to lose Lily. Or you." I looked at her for the first time in days. Really looked. "You lost me a long time ago, Emily. You just didn't notice." She flinched like I'd slapped her. For a second, I saw something crack behind her eyes. Maybe regret. Maybe just panic. That night, she asked if we could slow down the process. Said she needed time to get her bearings. I told her I'd think about it. What I didn't tell her: Rebecca Lynn had already looped in a forensic auditor. Someone specialized in tracing misappropriation of corporate funds. She had already uncovered internal emails showing Grayson used Emily's company account to book one of the hotel rooms. A trail was forming. A very clear one. I forwarded everything to HR at her firm. No anonymous notes. No threatening messages. Just a neatly packaged file labeled Concern. Financial misconduct. Thomas Grayson and Emily Carter. 2 days later, Grayson was suspended pending an internal investigation. Emily didn't say a word about it, but I noticed she started waking up earlier, skipping calls, leaving her phone face up on the counter like a peace offering. It was too late. I had given her every chance. The next school pickup, I saw one of the moms from the art night. She gave me a sympathetic smile and looked down awkwardly. I smiled back. Not warm, not cruel, just steady. The world knew now, and she couldn't spin it anymore.